Welcome to What's in a Game, where we discuss what the hell happened in the NBA last night during round one of the 2024 playoffs. How are you, Will?
I'm still processing the Jamal game winner. What can you say about it? It was insane.
We had two insane games last night. So today, Will and I are going to talk about obviously last night's crazy slate of insane endings, but we're also going to check into round one with Lakers Nuggets, Knicks Sixers, and the Suns Wolves series. And then we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other series happening in round one of the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, I'm excited. So far, there's been two games for the games that we're going to talk about, or the series we're going to talk about, and some of the other ones, which we can take a quick look at. Have only been one game. But just to do a brief check in on where we are around the league, there's a lot of teams that are winning games against teams that are not winning any games. Not a lot of mixed uh scores in these series.
Or
Um
any. Yeah, I think that we've noted that every higher seed has so far just held serve on home court. We're recording the day after the Lakers and Nuggets and Knicks and Sixers played their game twos. The Cavs also won their game two against the Orlando Magic. And I think that's interesting because a lot of people online were thinking that at least one of these teams would have dropped a home game by now. So I think it's pretty interesting that you just have higher seeds winning home games,
yeah,
or interesting that we find it interesting.
even the ones that we were confident and other people were confident, like Suns and Wolves, everyone was picking Suns and everyone was picking the Mavs. It's very trendy, but we haven't seen that yet. So game twos, I really want to see those because I'm interested in if something will flip or if it will be same old story.
I think Knicks and Sixers is some of the craziest stuff that we've seen where it seems like Philly got maybe the best possible first round matchup outside of maybe Indiana in terms of toughness, given the Knicks' injury issues, OG not quite being himself, and they don't have Julius Randle at all. But we'll get into that game.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Lakers Nuggets. Why don't you go, Will?
Oh man, yeah. So we didn't do a reaction after game one. And until further notice, we're not going to react to every single game. We'll probably let a game or two go by depending on the schedule. But I mean, I'll just briefly start with game one. I mean, we started out slow, obviously, slow shooting. I felt
We
like
being the
the
Nuggets,
Nuggets were,
not
yeah,
Will. He
sorry.
was not on the court.
When I say we, I mean Nuggets, but the Nuggets started out very slow shooting. LeBron was very aggressive early in that game, as opposed to game two, which is something I'm sure we're going to talk about. AG being in foul trouble was really bad because, as good as DeAndre Jordan was, like playing out of the blitz on Murray in the short roll, because he did get a dunk and he did get a foul when he made two free throws. He was getting like roasted by AD on defense, I think, in the 1v1.
Absolutely.
So it
He
was
did
like,
block him that one time, though.
yeah, which was great. And
It's really crazy that 80 got stuffed by 36-year-old DeAndre Jordan.
yeah,
But,
former teammate for a brief time on the Lakers. But yeah, it kind of made it really tough for the Nuggets to like start that comeback in that game. So I mean, both games really slow start, and we're like coming back into it. Um, and real quick, like, why do you think we shot worse in the first game than we did in the second game? Like in that first stretch where we were like
I
struggling.
feel like I haven't looked at the 3-point shooting numbers in particular, but I think we shot worse in the first game in the first half, in particular because MPJ shot worse in the first half. So everyone else still hasn't really gotten it going shooting wise from three. but in game 2, nobody was shooting well except MPJ, so at least he was kind of buoying them.
Yeah, which was yeah. I really want to get into the details of how MPJ was getting into his shots because it was so fascinating. Especially with Rui, who in the first game was playing drop on every pick and roll, playing against Jokic, trying to like contain Murray, trying to get back to Jokic with very bad results, I would say. The pocket pass was really open. I mean, Reggie turned it over one time on that pocket pass, which was wide open, and that was unfortunate. But
I
otherwise,
actually thought Rui adjusted in
in
that
in
one.
game one,
In
oh, in
game
that
1, the one that
turnover,
Reggie turned over, it was like a lax pass from Reggie, but Rui was more,
yeah,
deliberate in playing the pocket pass on that very last one because he'd gotten burned by it 3 times before and Jokic got dunks.
yeah, that's probably why it was behind Jokic because that pass was like way behind. I don't know if it got tipped. I don't remember, but
I think it
something was off.
did.
So he must have been trying to avoid Rui. But yeah, it was just like we were talking on Twitter and just messaging each other about like what is LA gonna do because it's do or die, and we know the Nuggets sweep them last playoffs, and if they don't do something now, it could be another sweep. And we kind of decided that AD is gonna have to take Jokic. We were unsure of where Braun was gonna be, but he ended up taking AG, and that meant Rui was on MPJ sometimes. So
In game
yeah,
2.
in game two. So it was
Yeah.
an interesting adjustment there. Not totally unpredictable, but it was working, especially because AD was playing good defense. Do you want to talk about Austin Reeves and his defense just on Murray? Because obviously Murray struggled in game two, but
And game
um,
1.
yeah, and game one.
2
So
points.
I know that was something you were
So,
looking at.
yeah, when I was, going through and kind of scouting how Jamal does against all these different defenders, I did note, Austin Reeves in there, and for the most part, like, Jamal has things that he can go to score on Austin, but one of the things that Austin is really good at is containing in ISO, uh, and this is true even against Jamal throughout the regular season matchups, and that is a lot of what Jamal was trying to get to in game 1. He did have some success attacking him in pick and roll, but I thought Austin, for the most part, did a good job applying back pressure in the Lakers lock and trail scheme. Jamal still, was able to, get downhill, get to the rim, sometimes especially because AD is usually so, focused on Jokic in those pick and rolls that Jamal can get a free run to the rim. But I think whenever AD is able to maintain his positioning in his drop, AR is applying really good back pressure. So Jamal has to make a tougher floater. And I thought he was better about that in game 1, even though he also had a rough shooting game. In game 2, he was missing everything. Every floater
Yeah.
was short, everything was off. I don't think that Austin played better defense in game 2 compared to game 1. I think he was, like, really good really in both. Um, but it is one of the things that I noted because I'd seen Austin be pretty positionally sound whenever he played, like, a shiftier guard. So the thing that, the Lakers got burned on whenever Austin or, like, any of their guards were switched on to, like, KCP or Reggie was their speed. And it wasn't until that 4th quarter, the beginning of the 4th quarter in game 2, that Jamal started to snake more pick and rolls, get downhill on Austin more easily using his speed advantage on AR in order to get to the rim and finally score. That's when the Lakers switched their matchups on Jamal, and I don't actually think it was all that good of an idea. Um, but we can get
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah, I mean, AD playing the pick and roll is already has really good recovery ability because he's quick for his size and he's one of the top defenders in the league. So we all know what he can
Great
do.
pick and roll
But
defender.
yeah, he's so good. So when you already have Austin Reeves, even though he's not like thought of as an elite perimeter defender, just chasing Jamal over every screen, and Jamal's thinking in the back of his mind like, I may get a rear contest or a block or something. Like you can see he's kind of like checking or like hesitating or like pump faking on the shot or something and then going into it. So he's doing enough to make Jamal question. Whereas what we saw with the Lakers last postseason was him just going into jump shots like without any fear. And so I don't know if like I don't know why Jamal was necessarily not as confident going up into a shot. I think maybe it was just Austin Reeves, just he felt him the whole time. But I think there were still moments where he could get to the shot. Um,
Well, a lot of what worked, say, in the Western Conference Finals, whenever Austin was the one on Jamal, and the Lakers cycled through everyone in that matchup. They had D'Lo on him at points. They had Schroeder. They had AR. They had Vanderbilt. But in the points when AR was on him, Jamal getting off the ball and coming off DHOs, that's another area where Jamal's able to use his quickness advantage to get a step on Austin off the ball, get to his spots so that he can take and make shots more easily. Because I think Austin presents a unique challenge when he is defending in isolation because he has good size and he's relatively positionally sound. So you have to use an athleticism of advantage against him, that speed, that quickness, as opposed to being shifty and crafty, because Austin, for the most part, he's not like biting on fakes
yeah.
and that kind of thing to get him off balance. I was really impressed when I saw him guarding SGA in the Lakers' last matchup against OKC. So, but I didn't think that Jamal would necessarily struggle because there are other ways that Jamal can attack as opposed to just going at him in ISO. D'Lo's the one who ends up being a really bad defender in isolation, and we saw points in this game where, and in game one where even like Christian Brown burning D'Lo on just driving on him in transition. I don't think that Christian does that unless that's the game plan because he is usually not timid, but he's not going. It was kind of a 1-on-2 situation as well. It was D'Lo and another Laker was kind of in the vicinity, but Christian's like, we're supposed to be attacking D'Lo. I'm getting downhill. So I think that was still a big fat bullet point. KCP also was burning D'Lo in transition, just attacking him in pick and roll. It was really interesting to see how often the Nuggets went to KCP in pick and roll because the Lakers had D'Lo on him, and KCP was either getting downhill or forcing the help and getting that pocket pass to Yoke. And I think there was even a time where KCP was able to make a skip pass to the corner, which was cool to see because he's
Mhm.
got a little bit of a playmaking bag. But yeah, it's still that people were wondering, like, oh, without Bruce Brown, how are the Nuggets going to attack D'Lo? On the ball, off the ball, in every way possible. Just put him into as many actions as you can.
I mean, coming into this, I almost thought it was going to be obvious that D'Lo was going to be the weakest point that we could attack, or that the Nuggets could attack. And now it's like a debate because I did not think Rui was good in Game Two. Yeah, because if he's going to be on MPJ or whoever, because there were times where Jokic would switch onto Rui, or they would hunt that, and then someone would double that. So AD would double from the weak side off MPJ, and then back to AR. He's rotating over to MPJ. Went a little too far on his closeout. MPJ hit the three. Rui also is not like lock and trailing MPJ. I just don't think he's that kind of defender. And so I was so happy to see MPJ hitting those shots because he was the only one who could shoot. He had a pretty weak matchup on him. And then like coming back to KCP, he's slipping out of these blitzes on Murray and like either just popping for a three, or if someone's coming to him, then he throws it to AG, and then AG's driving, and then the Lakers in rotation, and then we're passing and hitting shots. So I was very surprised with how weak Rui was, and I think AG or Jokic or whoever Rui is guarding, we could attack more. And I love Jokic guarding Rui too on defense because it's better to me that he's doing that than playing off AD and daring him to shoot. Even though I know AD struggles with the over the top shots, he was hitting them. He hit like what, like how much did he hit in a row? It was like 13 or 14.
I believe AD was 12 of 13 in the first half of game two.
Yeah, I think I counted it, and he hit 14
He was
shots.
hitting it wasn't just the jumper, which he actually didn't go to like the jump shot and like the longer jump shot in the mid range that often, although he was hitting them in the first half. It was the push shot. Like his touch was on, and that was what
Yeah,
was, I think, shocking to me. Frankly, it's probably shocking to the Nuggets too because it forced them to change their coverages
yeah,
and their matchups. But yeah, AD was exceptional in the first half of game one on both ends of the floor. He was absolutely taking it to Jokic, and whenever he was guarding Jokic was not scoring in the first half. I think it was a lot of like Jokic still needs to be a little quick and decisive when he's going against AD because AD is a really good defender. He's really long. Like how many shots of Jokic's has AD blocked? In the last couple of years. It's a lot. I feel like it happens at least once a game, even in the Western Conference Finals. And I think that Yoga was being a little too slow and deliberate in the post, and the Lakers were just like they were mixing up coverages, I think, really well. Even they weren't just leaving AD in single leaving AD to guard Yoke one on one in the first half. They were also, like you said, doubling in some of those situations as well, forcing you to pass out and not make the pass that he wants to make. I thought he was just exceptional defensively, and the Lakers were as a team. And one of the things I wanted to note about game two was for most of the game, not just the first half when the Lakers built their lead, LeBron was incredibly engaged defensively in help in particular. LeBron blocked a Jamal dunk off a handoff action where he lost AR off the ball. And I think that that kind of shook Jamal. But there was
mhm,
another early possession when Jamal gets to his spot, goes to his step back, and LeBron was in drop, and he jumps out so fast to run and contest it. He ends up blocking Jamal's jump shot too. Those were the two blocks that LeBron had in that game. And when I was going back and watching that, it felt like there was the biggest bullet point for the Lakers was do not let Jamal feel comfortable. Like there was so much attention on him from every Laker. I thought Rui was more aggressive in his defense on Jamal in the drop today. Normally, especially because both LeBron and Rui are definitely undersized to be playing a drop coverage. It's almost like AR with his back pressure and LeBron, whenever he was in drop or Rui was in game two, they were trying to like sandwich Jamal. They're like, you are not going to feel comfortable at all. They were just, yeah, the opposite of conservative in their coverages on Jamal. And you talk about him getting blitzed and others having to make plays out of it. And LeBron was a big part of that because his activity and awareness in his off ball defense is really important for the Lakers' defensive ceiling. I think even more than their like we talk about their limitations on the perimeter, but you can cover a lot of that up when you have a locked in 39-year-old LeBron who is playing this game honestly like it was like this was going to be his last playoff series of his career. I was floored with what he was doing on both ends of the floor, but particularly defensively.
yeah. He was amazing, and it just I always just go back to roster when I think about the Lakers and LeBron because he can play as close to perfect as he possibly can. And there's going to be some kind of hole somewhere. And then he's going to be, throwing his hands up and shrugging and being mad at some play because someone didn't run back in transition or just whatever. But, and I mean, he's not perfect. Nobody is. I mean, he's made some mistakes, which
He
are
had some
interesting to,
turnovers late in this game.
yeah. Yeah. He, obviously not perfect. And he missed the three, I think, that then we came down and hit the game winner. And so, I mean, that's not like a mistake. Obviously, you can't make every shot, but
He kind of pushed off of KCP. I think that could have been called an
oh
offensive
yeah,
foul.
yeah, it could have
I
been.
actually think that KCP flopping actually threw
Oh,
LeBron's rhythm off.
Oh yeah, that was so
I
scary. I
don't think
saw
KCP like
KCP.
flop-flopped though, because like you get LeBron's shoulder into you, you're gonna fall, but I do think that he
He
accentuated the
tried to
fall a
sell
little
it.
bit. But
Yeah,
it threw off LeBron's rhythm,
I
and
know.
LeBron was in so much rhythm in that game. He was hitting everything from deep. He
Hmm.
was hitting everything from the mid-range too. Like, I think Jason Timpf talks about this right shoulder fade that LeBron is like really bad. He's shooting like 20 some percent on it on the season. He hit one over Yoke when Jokic got switched onto him late in a late shot clock situation. He had another crazy bailout shot over KCP um, from the top of the right block. It was crazy. Like LeBron was
Yeah.
on one in this game.
Yeah, I think it was interesting in game one too. We had to bring in P Watt early because of AG foul trouble, and then P Watt's guarding LeBron in his first like true playoff minutes early in a game. So, and he was going under on screens, and LeBron was toasting him. And I mean, other people did it too, not just P Watt. So I think I don't know. I don't know if Nuggets are gonna like try really hard to not go under on LeBron screens and like try to take away his shot. I think I don't know. I feel like they're just living with the results of that. But LeBron can shoot it. But Piwa is learning some lessons too. Now that I'm bringing up his name, like you know, where is he positionally on the help is a little too far over off D'Lo, one pass away. Then D'Lo hits a three, and there was the audio, the game audio of the game where Malone's like, "We told you, we told you to help there, we told you to double there, but you can't be that far off because D'Lo's like hit three threes already or whatever he said." So P wants learning some lessons, but he's still a nice weapon for us. Where I'm like, let P Watt trail and try and make a play on defense, and Jokic, instead of you like rolling over to contain the drive and you're letting AD open, like maybe you should stay a little more home on AD. Let P Watt try and make a play, try and get a block or
Yeah,
something.
let LeBron use his energy trying to get downhill every time. It's a quandary, right? You still have 39-year-old LeBron James like freight train in transition, and absolutely one of the scariest things that you can see coming downhill on you on an NBA court. And we're talking about whether they should go under on his screens because
Yeah,
he's shooting over 40% from three this season.
I know.
Like, it's insane. So I will say that one of the things I noted, despite the two like mid-range jumpers that LeBron made, he actually went less than 50% from two in this game. There were
Mm,
a lot of really big important stops at the rim that happened in the second half. That LeBron was hunting mismatches on Jamal and Peyton and Christian. I thought Christian got a really big stop on him. Lakers ended up getting the offensive rebound off. I was like, man, you guys got to get that offensive rebound because Christian just stopped LeBron from, like, he has some of the craziest finishes at the rim, but then, like, it feels like he finishes everything. But in the
yeah.
second half of this game, he was not finishing everything. And I do think that toward the end of the second quarter, like, he went up for a layup, and you could already kind of see, like, okay, the lift is starting to not be there anymore. Starts settling for jump shots in the second half. He was making them, those threes, those middies. He in the first game, I recall a late possession where he had Reggie switch on him sometime in the third quarter when the Nuggets were they had stormed back and they were already in the lead. He got Reggie switch on him from the top of the arc, and he took a three. It was like kind of middle of the shot clock situation. He could have driven there. It's Reggie Jackson.
Hmm.
Uh, he took a three, bricks it. Um, and in the second half of this game, it was the middies and it was the threes. Like he got AG switched on to him because we switched up those matchups in the second half of game two when AD was cooking Jokic. We put AG on AD,
Yeah.
and so when they ran that pick and roll, they could switch it. It was tough because you end up with KCP on LeBron as the primary, and so D'Lo ends up being able to go off a little bit in the fourth whenever they do go to him. Uh, Lakers did some really strange things late in this game.
Hmm.
Clearly, the matchup switching that the Nuggets did affected them because they didn't really quite know exactly what they wanted to do offensively. Um, because they didn't want to just get like a switch on the LeBron AD pick and roll. D'Lo ends up closing in this game, and you end up in a situation where because KCP is on LeBron, Jamal has to guard D'Lo. Jamal was really like awful defensively in this game in every possible way. 1-on-1. He was put into low man positions multiple times, and he was really late to tag AD. Another time he was too early to tag. Austin Reeves gets a
Yeah.
kick out, and Jamal is not able to get out there in time. And I don't know how to judge that in terms of his performance, because he, especially the one on the trying to rotate back out to Austin, because uh, Jamal is not like an ideal low man because he is a guard, right? So he can't cover quite as much ground in that time.
Yeah, Jamal had some rough timings on his help and his stunting and like trying to recover to AR, whoever it was. And as the low man was rough, they were trying to get Jamal in the pick and roll as much as possible to put him in that position.
But they had Jamal on D'Lo in this game, and he got burned on a pick and roll that D'Lo ran. D'Lo ends up hitting like a crazy high up off the glass scoop over AG's late contest, because he goes to contest it late. And they didn't really go to D'Lo again that whole time. So it's
Yeah.
weird for the Lakers, who are a team that's predicated on mismatch hunting, to have that mismatch. It worked at least once in that fourth. They have D'Lo out there, but I think they're just like, well, he's just there as a spacer, I guess.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, they have to account for him defensively on the other end. I just thought that the Lakers were very discombobulated late in that game, but a lot of things had to happen on their
Yeah,
end much sooner for that game to even get to the clutch, because like we said, the Nuggets were down 20 in the third quarter.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, they didn't have a natural flow on their offense when we put AG on AD and Yoke on Rui and KCP's getting onto LeBron and did amazing like swiping at the ball and getting turnovers on LeBron and just making it tough on him. I don't know how viable that is to have KCP always on LeBron because he's so much bigger, obviously. But if we
I'm
have to
sure
go to
that's
it,
gonna be a situational thing.
yeah, if we have to go to it late, like we did, just to try to like get back in the game and close the game out, and then you have AG and Yoke rebounding off whatever LeBron's doing because he missed some layups there where we got the rebound and we're pushing in transition. But those adjustments late were huge for us, and I don't know that we get back in the game without that.
Jamal is cold as hell, man, because
Yeah,
he was having like the roughest game on both ends of the floor that I've seen him play all season. Regular season, I have not seen him play a game that bad. Not because like he's missed a lot of shots before, although he was missing, I think, a lot in this game. I think he started 3 for 18 from the field before that fourth quarter, where he went 6 for 8. um, Bright lights merchant Jamal Murray, the mental toughness it takes. And articles have come out this morning about how he said that he was getting annoyed with his teammates who were telling him to keep shooting, because he was like, I'll just contribute in other ways, all this stuff. But the way that this team like builds each other up, and Yoke was a big part of that too, because he just kept giving Jamal the ball, especially down the stretch. It wasn't just in the clutch; it was that entire fourth quarter.
yeah, it was a rough from Jamal, rough shooting. Once he started hitting shots at the end, it was like one on Vincent, where he got space.
Yep.
Right after that, too, he had another tough shot. He scored it, and it was like heavily contested, and just makes it. It's like one of those tough Murray shots.
They knew they needed Jamal in order to complete this thing, and yeah, they kept going to him, and dude delivered, because that last shot over AD was cold.
That's everyone's gonna remember that. Everyone's gonna remember the sequence of AG saving the ball and hitting MPJ and him hitting the game tying three.
MPJ kept us in this game. That comeback
Yes,
does not happen if MPJ isn't hitting every shot that he
gosh,
hit in the first half, in the third quarter, and that huge shot down the in the clutch to tie it after LeBron hit the breakaway dunk off a turnover that Jamal had, which is I don't think that it was like a bad pass by Jamal. He was just trying to get it to Yoke. LeBron read it, and like I said, his defensive activity in this game was crazy.
yeah.
I do not know how he or the Lakers emotionally recover from a game like this. because he played so well, because AD played so well, because they had D'Lo go 7 of 11 from three, and they were up 20, and then they lost.
Is very heartbreaking for them. I think we were talking before the game, and we were talking a little bit about just trying to focus more on Jokic and limiting what he's doing. And if that means that Jamal is going to have to put everything on his shoulders and carry, then they can try that out. Because I know watching the Nuggets that Murray isn't as consistent as we all want him to be. Because in the regular season, it's like he's just not having a good game, and then he has an amazing game. Last playoffs, he was amazing almost the whole time. Maybe it was ramping up a little bit, and I don't know if that's still
His
the
game
case.
twos tended to be stinkers,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. But it's like, is he revving up? Is he like playing into shape right now? What's going on with him? Is he gonna just be like a crazy, super tough shot maker every game soon? I don't know, but I know that it's possible that Jamal can have a cold game, and it's like the Lakers can gamble on that a little bit, try to let Jamal try and beat them, and he may not. He may go 3 of 16 in a stretch, and the Lakers can steal a game. Like that's something they can do, and so they almost did it this game. Luckily, the Nuggets pulled it off in miraculous fashion,
I think
but
the
with some
Nuggets
good.
stole this game.
Yeah, the
They
Nuggets.
snatched it
They,
away.
yeah. So, and it's just I just think about the Lakers and their roster where it's like AD and LeBron to like win. AD has to be the best offensive player and best defender, I feel like. Jokic and Murray don't have to be the best defensive players on the Nuggets, and LeBron and AD basically do. And it's this weird thing where it's a trade off of the role players being passable, AR and Rui being passable on defense, and then D'Lo hitting shots versus the Nuggets where we have all these options and variety in our offense and in our defense and how we can attack and solve problems. Whereas the Lakers just don't have that. So
Yeah, they only have one way to win. AD and Braun have to be really great on both ends, and you have to get contributions from the others, offensively in particular,
mhm.
especially with D'Lo. Whereas, yeah, the Nuggets clearly have multiple ways to win. I didn't think Jokic was good at all in the first half
Yeah,
of this game. I was floored when I saw his final stat
his
line. I did
stat
think he was
line.
great in the fourth quarter. He was finally just
Yeah.
bodying AD and hitting everything. Um,
Yeah, we haven't. It's like Jokic's the only thing we haven't talked about with this
I
game. So
know
I wanted to
he
like close
finished
on him.
he finished game. I thought he was amazing in game one. There were a lot of people that thought that AD played Jokic toe to toe in the
Oh,
first game or even outplayed him. I just think that's completely
I mean,
false because Yoke
yeah,
was cooking, he was diming, he was defending. In the
yeah,
second game, I thought Jokic was bad. Like he was getting completely outplayed by AD, who I thought was amazing in the first half of that game. And even through a large stretch of the third quarter as the Lakers were extending their lead up to 20. In the fourth quarter, Jokic just kind of takes over. He and Jamal are running two-man game. Jokic finishes with 25, 20 rebounds
hmm,
and 10 assists. The 20 rebounds are big because a big storyline in this series and a couple of the others we're going to talk about is just who's controlling the glass. And offensive rebounding is always a problem for the Lakers. And it's been a problem in certain games for the Nuggets as well. Last game, the Nuggets had 15 offensive rebounds on LA. I thought LA did a much better job of cleaning up the glass in this game. I think they cleaned up like 75% of the available defensive rebounds, which is like just solid. Like that's a decent defensive rebounding game for any team. The Nuggets in game two, in a game where there's no margin for error, you're down 20, you're trying to come back. The Nuggets cleaned up 86% of available defensive rebounds. If that were their season average, they would lead the league by a mile. It like and Yoke was a big part of that. He cleaned up 44% of the available defensive rebounds when he was on the floor by himself, which is crazy for a center. Um, I mean, all centers should be getting most of the defensive rebounds, but it's crazy even for a center. Like you're kind of looking for anything above 26, 27% is usually like a pretty good defensive rebounding game. But obviously, he doesn't get to 20 rebounds without cleaning up every possible thing.
Yeah, I mean, with Jokic, I'll just say this real quick. Like at the beginning, he had some good one-on-one plays with like Rui or AD where he could have made the shot and he just missed them. Other times it was way tougher for him, or he just wasn't taking shot attempts. He only had one shot attempt in the second quarter, so he just like really didn't take over till late. I think they were like trying to get Jamal going. He was trying to figure out how to get his shots naturally with this new defense that the Lakers were doing, and I mean he got some good one-on-one plays late in the game that helped. So, and he did amazing rebounding at times. So, yeah, that's really it. We'll be interested to see how the Lakers adjust at home and whether they'll make this a series or not.
Yeah, let's move on to the other crazy heartbreaker, really, game of the night. And in this series as a whole. I actually want to know, Will, I picked the Knicks in this series. What did you think that this series was going to look like?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I knew it was going to be close, and I think it depended on Embiid because we were like, if he's 100% and he's playing like he was playing, when he was front runner for MVP before he got injured, it might be hard to stop them because they look amazing. With Randall hurt and Embiid being whatever percent he's at, it's still really close. And I think it comes down to the details and who's kind of adjusting on the fly the most. Because, like we see plays where Brunson's driving and Lowry is kind of out of help. And then the next play, Lowry's helping more, Brunson's driving, and then he's kicking and, passing out for a three and they're scoring. And it's just how it's like a really interesting kind of chess match where Embiid's playing drop and he's kind of slowly coming out to the perimeter. And then if he's not healthy, are they going to be able to drive past him? Like I saw Brunson drive past him. And so I think it's just about who's going to be better at limiting Brunson or Maxi because Maxi was insane in this game. And yeah, the Knicks obviously stole that game. And so I don't know if like this series is going to be, the Sixers are going to figure something out and be healthier and they're going to just win 4 games in a row because the Knicks are kind of shorthanded too, or if the Knicks are just with their toughness and their sound play going to just keep winning games and put the Sixers away.
I will say, even though I picked the Knicks in this series, I did not expect it to look like this if the Knicks were going to win.
Hmm.
One of the things that I was kind of banking on is that New York would have a really aggressive offensive game plan in terms of the pace, which is contrary to how they normally play because they're one of the slowest teams in the NBA. Their offense is very methodical and deliberate, as sort of led by their best player, who is Jalen Brunson. But when they played Philly in the regular season, that is how they attacked Joel. And this is before Joel hurt his knee. I think he hurt his knee initially in this game, in that regular season matchup. And that was late in the game, but they were getting completely demolished to that point. The Knicks have played very slowly on offense in this series in a way that is really frustrating to me and frustrating to Knicks fans because Embiid is definitely more hobbled than he was when they played in the regular season, given the meniscus injury and the coming back from that surgery. Jalen Brunson has been incredibly limited, and because they don't have Julius Randle, you don't have that secondary half court shot creation really at all.
I'm just wondering like how the Knicks are going to keep getting Brunson space because they're playing aggressive on him. Like you said, they're playing kind of slow in the half court because they're like trying really hard to get certain switches. So, like if they don't get it, they're trying again, and it's taking a long time,
I
which
also
is
don't think any of the switches are great either. I think in game one, they were hunting Maxi a lot, but Maxi was actually he held up
mm,
really well defensively against Brunson, just applying back pressure and funneling him into Embiid. If
yeah.
that's, there was one possession in the fourth quarter of game two when they had subbed Joel out. Jalen Brunson comes in like a possession before Joel comes back in, and he hits a floater over Paul Reed. It's very different when you have the 7-footer playing and drop versus the 6'9" guy playing and drop. Brunson feels a lot more comfortable getting to his floater, even when there's good back pressure on him. But I think that Maxey, Oubre, and Batum, who have all
Oh man.
rotated, they've just cycled through these guys, throwing them at Brunson, have
Yeah.
been really good in their role of applying that back pressure, top blocking JB, and just funneling him into Embiid, also
Mm-hmm.
getting sandwiched. It's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Oubre's been good at like trying to deny Brunson just like getting the ball even,
Yeah.
and they've done some cool things like use Brunson as a screener just to like try and
Mm-hmm.
get him some space so they can keep
And
trying
get
that.
other space too. Like,
Yeah. There's things they can do. It's just yeah, that's why I'm just like this is a close series even with it's a close series even with all the injuries that are going on. So it's just going to be these little details and who's going to execute the best and get their players open. And even though Brunson is getting switches at the end of the game, he was missing those shots, and they just needed one shot to go in to like seal that game, and so they ended up having to come back in this crazy way. Whereas if somebody hits a shot, they're fine.
you have guys on this roster who can hit a spot at three. Maybe your best secondary creator on the roster is Bojan Bogdanovic, who comes off the bench and has some limited minutes, mostly to spot OG at that 4 spot. Like, it doesn't make sense because what happened in game 1 was that New York completely dominated the bench minutes because Deuce McBride became Steph Curry for a game, and also Klay Thompson. Let's go with Klay Thompson because he was doing an incredible defensive job on Tyrese Maxey in those minutes and also hitting like every three. They got a huge spark off the bench from Deuce and Boyan in that game 1 to help the Knicks take a lead after Philly was kind of destroying the starters in Embiid's minutes. And then the game came down to the wire almost, but then the Knicks were able to pull it off a little bit more comfortably after the starters. Tibbs ended up closing with Mitchell Robinson in that first game, and he was really good defensively on Joel, just with his 7'4" wingspan. He was able to play the drive, but also be able to contest the jump shot. I thought that Tibbs might go to him more in game 2. He didn't. Isaiah Hartenstein shows up, has a really good defensive performance actually on Joel compared to how he performed in game 1, where Joel was really just kind of overmatching him athletically and just physically in game 1. But in game 2, I think Hartenstein kind of figured some things out about how to play Joel a little bit more. And Joel was not as, I think, aggressive, particularly in the
Mm-hmm.
second half of game 2, when he could have attacked, I think, more downhill. It was really about like, oh, how do I set up Maxey? Because clearly Joel, like, he does not look right. He's making his jump shots. He actually is playing. His overall play is better than anything I've seen from any of his playoff runs. But he's settling for jump shots, and he's making them at a decent clip. I think somebody said that he's taken 8 threes in the first 2 games. I think both of the first 2 games. And he's only taken 8 threes in one regular season game over the last few years. So clearly he's settling a bit more for the jumper because he's not comfortable with his knee. Then you have this crazy offensive rebounding disparity that happens in game 1 that helps the Knicks. They were grabbing 55% of available offensive rebounds. Like, that was a horrible defensive rebounding performance from Philly. And in game 2, Philly really cleaned that up. They were a lot closer to where you'd want to be, 75% of the defensive rebounds they grabbed them, which is good because against this Knicks team, which is not a good offensive team, we saw the same thing happen against Miami in the playoffs last year, where the Knicks were a top 6 offense, but if you can limit their offensive rebounding, actually their half court creation is quite limited.
Hmm.
Even with Julius Randle on the floor, because of his decision making, but they don't even have Julius Randle on the floor now. So Philly was able to
Yeah.
limit the offensive rebounds, although uh, New York was still able to grab some big ones.
Do you think it's because Embiid's just limited and can't get those rebounds and like just play better on the glass?
He has not been a good defensive rebounder in this series. I believe in game two, he only grabbed 16% of available defensive rebounds, which is really, really bad for a center, for the best rebounder on the floor, for the biggest guy on the floor, on a team that doesn't really have another member of the front court. I think the way that Philly was able to mitigate that gap in game two in the on the boards was more gang rebounding from all their wings and guards. But Joel has to be better in that department because this Knicks team is just going to keep coming at
Yeah.
you. And even that big offensive rebound by Isaiah Hartenstein,
They get it
Hartenstein
back.
grabs offensive rebound, kicks back out to Dante. If Joel grabs that rebound, the game is over, right?
Yeah.
But it's one of like Embiid's playing really well on the whole. Maxey is playing out of his mind. New York somehow survives the Maxey flu game where Jalen Brunson is still not shooting well. Deuce McBride did not have as hot a game
No.
two as game one, and he wasn't quite as good at containing Maxey when he was defending him. OG is getting cooked off the bounce by Maxey, both on and off the ball,
Yeah. I still feel
because
like
that's not
Deuce
a
is their
great.
best bet on Maxi, like
It's
in some
and
ways.
Philly's doing basically everything right, and New York is still like winning these games somehow.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. The
Oh,
last thing that I wanted to say about game two in particular was Josh Hart was very aggressive in game two. He was taking and making a lot of his open shots, particularly in the first half, that kept New York in this game because do think Philly was probably going to run away with it if Josh Hart hadn't gone 4 of 8 from three in the first half. But he was taking those shots, which was really important because of all the attention that Brunson was garnering. But also, he was pushing pace in transition whenever he got the rebound, even though New York was not playing fast as a team or playing with a particular pace in the half court, even. And so he and Dante and Hartenstein, like all of these New York and like I don't think Hartenstein is, but all these Villanova boys are somehow winning these basketball games that they shouldn't be winning.
yeah, the Villanova Magic. I don't think the Sixers are gonna go super far in this playoffs because it was game two and Embiid looked like he'd played 4 series already. Like, I don't know how
Yeah.
he's gonna get through with his knee. I mean,
Like he was playing well, except the rebounding thing, but he
yeah,
was settling for jump shots, making
exactly.
them, some of them, but
Yeah. And that's the thing is like he's playing well enough to win this series, I think. I don't think they're going to make the finals unless he heals up over time playing through all these games, which historically, the more he plays, the worse the like more wear he's getting.
yeah.
He still plays fine. I mean, he's had playoff, stinkers or whatever however you want to put it, but he has a whole other level that he could be playing right now even. With his limited mobility, Hart has more of a chance to contain Maxi and get back to Embiid if he's rolling, which maybe they're not going to do as much because he's settling for jumpers.
I saw him roll once in this game, and I was shocked because I don't think I'd seen that in several
Yeah,
games. Like Embiid is a
it's like
popper,
rare.
even when he was healthy. That's what he does. He pops into that
Yeah,
um, free throw line jumper
mid-range
area.
jumper, which he was getting,
Yeah,
and we'll see if that's gonna still work for them and get them out of this series. He even is passing fine, passing pretty good. I mean, Maxi is driving like crazy, but he's doing back cuts, and Embiid can hit him that way. So there's ways that they can still get, I mean, good shots, and their Maxi is proving that he can be like a number one option, I guess, in this case, since Embiid's just not playing to the level that we know he can, even though he's still doing fine. I also think that um DiVincenzo, they should run more sets for him if Embiid's
I
playing drop.
completely agree. I completely
Because
agree
if
with that.
Embiid's in drop, DiVincenzo, he's shooting well. So just like run a set for him and let him shoot. He's gonna be wide open coming off a screen.
Yeah.
He's like just gonna curl off it and shoot. and that's like he's
More
good at that.
more two-man stuff with Brunson and DiVincenzo also, I think would
Yeah,
be
could
good.
be cool.
Just
Yeah.
yeah, play
So
off of the attention that both are garnering because they have been. I thought in game one they did a better job of sticking to DiVincenzo while also playing aggressively on Brunson. But if you're running some two-man stuff on those guys just to get either some space, you could really play off of the attention that either is getting. We're talking about the Knicks a lot because we're looking at Philly offensively and we're like, you guys just keep doing what you're doing. Because to me, Philly should be up 2-0 in this series.
I know. I still think
And
they
yet
can
New
win.
York is like they just keep doing what they're doing offensively and defensively, and New York is the one that has to keep adjusting even though they're the ones that are up 2-0. It's just like
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you, man. Get
Yeah.
someone from Villanova. That's the
Mhm.
that's the adjustment that
They
Philly
could have
needs to make.
traded for Mikal Bridges or something at the trade deadline, you know.
That's true. They didn't do that.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. The games have been super close, so we'll see if Philly can finally win one. Yeah, let's go to the other interesting series, Suns and Wolves. There's only been one game, and they're going to play game two today as we're recording. But the winner of this game is going to play the Nuggets. Oh, sorry. I mean, the Nuggets haven't won, but
If the Nuggets win this round, the winner of this
if the
series
Nuggets
will play the
win,
Nuggets.
I'm expecting the Nuggets to win. Breaking news. So everyone came into this thinking Suns are a jump shooting machine, and that's the Wolves' weakness. So this is horrible for them. But they outscored them and won by quite a bit in that game. And I was really impressed. I ended up picking the Wolves over Suns because I was like, I just feel like I can't overthink it and just say the Suns are just a worse team. And just, even though the matchups are interesting and we can talk about them. I mean, it's still only one game. So the Suns could still win. It's not over by any means. But I was just like, one of the first, I mean, I want to talk about a lot of this stuff, but one of the first things I noticed was just the Wolves' depth being much more impressive to me than um, like Royce O'Neal and Eric Gordon. Like when those players come in, I felt like they were just so much more aggressive and their size was so much more effective. And it just reminds you that the Suns are super top heavy and they've gone all in with these stars. And if their starters are not winning these matchups, like if Allen's not winning the matchup with Conley, or Booker's not taking it to Conley, or Nurk's not being more effective against Rudy, they're going to have a tough time to win the series no matter if KD's hitting all of his jump shots, just like we saw. Yeah, I was impressed. I thought Rudy like killed Nurk, even though I liked some of what Nurk did as far as like split actions where the other guards are running screens and Nurk can pass it to them. Like they can do stuff like that. And I know people criticize the Suns for having a pretty limited offense where they're just like trading ISO plays, but they can play better offense with advantages and then capitalizing on them. I just think they have to do that more if they want to win.
I think you're right, but I also think that the Wolves are, at least with their game plan in this game one, it seemed like it was an emphasis to force the Suns into their worst tendencies. So, like you say, the Suns do have some of these motion sets that they can run using Nurkic as a hub, just to get some, off ball movement going and get everyone involved in a more deliberate way. But they do like ISO ball.
Hmm.
And when a team is going to let them play ISO ball, they're going to take that. They're not going to, at least in game one, they haven't really adjusted to, okay, how do we force you to let us do something other than ISO ball? And one of the things that happened in the regular season matchups was the Wolves were kind of staying in mostly their base coverage. They tweaked some things defensively in that last game of the season, but it was mostly Rudy and drop, either a deep drop or a higher drop. And yeah, you were just relying on everyone on the perimeter to do their jobs on Booker, Beal, and KD, which is tough because Cat is KD's primary defender, and KD is like running off screens now, and it's just tough for a bigger guy like that to navigate that situation. But in this game, they had Jaden McDaniels on Booker, and to me, that changes the texture of the game. It changes the texture of the series. We know that when the Wolves play us, they have Jaden on Jamal from the start. And Jaden is really good at disrupting pick and roll. He is really good in isolation. Can struggle sometimes with some shiftier players, but um, Devin Booker isn't really like a shifty guard. He's really strong. He's really fast. He has like a little bit of fluidity to his game, but he's fundamentally a different kind of player um, than Jamal in how he gets to his shot. He gets to his spots, and I think Jaden did an excellent job of disrupting Booker, which meant that everything that could flow from the attention that Booker would garner off of his primary guy, whether it was the center playing more at the level and, initiating like the Wolves having to be in rotation, getting more open threes off of that wasn't happening. I do think there are like a lot of interesting individual matchups in this series that mean that every game is probably going to look very different. One of the things that Minnesota did was they were just very aggressive in all of their coverages to force the Suns to play more ISO. It wasn't that they were never putting two on the ball, which is another kind of aggressive thing that they did at points in this game for specific reasons, but they were switching a lot. They were switching Rudy onto KD. They were switching Rudy onto Booker. They were switching Rudy onto Grayson Allen at one point. They were switching. Obviously, when you have Jaden on Book, that means anything that Book wants to run with KD, they can switch that too. Because they'd had Ant on KD, which I think that's at different points in this game, although he was mostly on Beal. That there's a lot of interesting little matchups there. Like we talk about all of the different ways that say Jamal would have success around different kinds of defenders, but you have three of kind of similar-ish isolation players in Booker, Beal, and KD. And then you have this highly defensively versatile Wolves team that can kind of cycle through the matchups and the kinds of defenders that you want to put on each player. Like to me, it seemed like whenever Jaden was on KD, actually, like I said, they could switch that. But KD is very comfortable when he's playing a defender who is not as strong as him. That's one of the things that makes Aaron Gordon as a matchup for him a little bit more difficult, is because he both has the size and strength to contend with KD, but also that length to, I don't know, about like contesting his shot, but maybe bother it a little bit. Whereas most like bigger wings that would be on him, say a Jaden McDaniels, who is either longer, or you have Ant, who's not quite as long, but he's very strong, he's stout on this team. Or you have Cat, who's like really big and strong, but obviously like KD's going to cook in isolation, which is what happened in game one. Like KD went off. And the Wolves were like, we're fine with you trying to beat us with KD long middies in ISO over Cat and Rudy. So yeah, this whole matchup is really interesting from the Suns' offensive side. But to me, the thing that is just going to be the Wolves' biggest advantage, if they can continue to capitalize on it, is they're just bigger.
Mm-hmm.
They're bigger everywhere. Mike Conley is the only minus sized guy for his position on the floor. Everyone else is huge. You have Ant at shooting guard. He's 6'6".
Yeah.
Like we talk about how big the Nuggets are, but sometimes the Wolves make the Nuggets look small, particularly our bench. But that's one of the things that really stood out in this matchup was just the Wolves had 13 offensive rebounds in this game. And they weren't necessarily shooting a lot better from the field than the Suns. There were some other things that kind of helped the Wolves win the possession battle. Suns turnovers been a problem all season. Both of these teams are like very turnover prone, but the rebounding battle was the disparity was crazy because you end up in a situation where I think Nurk is one of the best rebounders in the NBA, and Rudy just completely outplayed him on the glass in this game. And it wasn't just situations where Rudy was beating him to rebounds. Like Rudy being able to box out Nurk meant the other Wolves getting rebounding over the rest of the Suns team, which is just slighter and smaller. It just leaves them at a disadvantage. Like we talk about how important it is when Jokic is just boxing out the other guy's best rebounder, and because the Nuggets have advantages size wise on the
Hmm.
across the rest of the roster, across the rest of the lineup, they're going to win that rebounding battle, even if Jokic isn't getting those rebounds. Rudy was doing both. He was boxing out Nurk and he was getting every rebound. I think he had, what was it, 20, was it 18 rebounds in this game? So Nurk has to be better because he is where the Suns have a size advantage. He's actually like much bigger than Rudy in terms of like just strength. And he's going to be the key to unlocking their offense, like you say, in ways that don't just purely rely on ISO, not just as a hub, but also in pick and roll. They're going to have to get more creative with him. And he's going to have to hold up against this Wolves team that the other thing that stood out to me in this game one was the Wolves were finally, compared to the regular season matchups, making it a point to push the pace in transition because the
Yeah.
Suns have a good half court defense. Most teams have a better half court defense than their transition defense. But the Wolves were able to overwhelm Phoenix athletically by playing with pace and playing in transition.
Yeah, because I mean, the Wolves have questions about their half court offense. So, and they're loading up on Ant. So if they're getting a stop or a turnover, and then Ant in space on transition is insane. That's scary. So that's gonna get Ant easy shots. So we'll see. But I guess theoretically, the Suns thought their offense is gonna be so good that this isn't gonna happen. But they were turning it over. I also thought Katie's finishing at the rim was a little weak. Um, he was hitting his jumpers, but like I think he was like 1 for 3 at the rim or something like that, which is kind of weird.
Only 3 shots at the rim.
Yeah,
That's the part that gets me, not the finishing, which is also like you got to make those,
yeah. I
but
mean, he can make them. We know he can.
right, but he wasn't getting downhill.
Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
part of it was that when you have I noticed in certain possessions that Rudy, when Katie was hitting his jumpers, he'd have Cat or Rudy on him, and they were both kind of playing off KD a little bit, which I didn't think was like the best idea because I tend to, if I'm like thinking of the best way for a defender of their size to defend KD, like you really want to crowd him, force him to beat you off the dribble, and especially if you're Cat, Rudy's on the backside and he can either bother the shot at the rim or block it. And if you're Rudy, like you could probably just force a miss, even if Katie gets a step on you. Although Rudy's a little bit not slower than Cat, but he wouldn't have himself obviously on the backside if he's the primary on Katie in that situation. So they were playing off of him, and Katie was able to get really comfortable into his jumper. But it seems like that was the game plan from Minnesota. They're like, you're going to beat us with your long twos,
Hmm.
and Katie can hit those. Katie could hit every one, especially if you're going to let him get comfortable. So I'm curious if he has a game in this series that forces Minnesota to change not their coverage of him, but how those two in particular defenders
Hmm.
guard him. I also thought
Yeah,
Nikhil Alexander Walker, who even though he's smaller than Jaden McDaniels, like he's quicker, like quicker footed. So well, Katie could absolutely just post him up and shoot over him. But the way that Naw was on Katie was like, I'm a small, so I'm gonna just crowd you here, which is a lot how KCP and Bruce and Christian were whenever they got switched onto KD for certain possessions when the Nuggets played the Suns last year.
yeah. I think I was just frustrated watching the film of this game because I feel like the Wolves' game plan was, like you said, Katie beat us with your twos, but that was also the Suns' game plan, and they were like, Yeah, just shoot
Yeah.
shoot the twos, and it's like
That's the yeah.
it didn't really work, and
That's
I'm
the
like,
thing
can't
is,
they
like,
do
they didn't
something?
they
Yeah,
like doing that. So when the
yeah,
Wolves are like, "Our game plan is to let you do what you would want to do anyway." Like, the Suns don't wanna run sets. They can, and they're super effective when they are able to, but
yeah.
if you're like, "Well, we're just gonna let you guys go ISO and, you know, go
I'm
cook."
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm expecting too much from KD. I don't know as much about like where he's at right now in his age. I mean, I know he's a lethal shooter, but I'm like, even Cat had 4 assists and had some cool assists from the post, like over his head, like a Jokic style. And KD's
Yeah, there
not
was a lot
passive.
of big to big, stuff happening. I was really impressed with Cat in
Me
this
too.
game.
I was
He
like,
was
can't
really,
KD
like
do something?
yeah, he was using his size advantage more, I think. I mean, KD doesn't have as much of a size advantage in this matchup,
Hmm.
and I honestly think, like, you're talking about KD, but to me, the key for the Suns in this series is gonna be how we're gonna get Book going.
Yeah. It is
Um,
funny that we didn't come
yeah.
into this series like, hey, Booker's really good, but like the Suns have Jaden McDaniels.
Well, I
It
think
can
the reason
disrupt him
I
a little bit.
thought that was that the Wolves never put Jaden on Book in the regular season. They saved
Yeah.
that for us. They save it for Jamal. And I was wanting them to, especially after like that first game that they played in the season. The Wolves were on a back to back. They got blown out by the Suns, but I remember watching that and thinking because it was after the Wolves had played us in our first game against them, and I was like, oh, Jaden's not on Book. That's weird. So I thought they would just go to it at some later point in the season.
Yeah.
They never did. At
I,
least as the primary.
I guess we'll see if that comes back in a way that the Suns can adjust and whatever, and they have time to adjust. But I mean, Booker is interesting because even if I don't know, like he's so good, but there are times in the playoffs where he can disappear. And I'm maybe sounding too like harsh or whatever, not in what I'm saying, but just even bringing this up
No, let the
that
hate flow through you.
like Booker, we saw him go nuclear against the Nuggets, but there are times where he just like is going to disappear. Like I think Jaden McDaniels did well on him, but I mean Booker also just I just don't think was playing as well. And yeah, we'll see. They got to get him going. I also think like they should get Beal going more. I felt like he was playing better than Booker, but they just weren't going to him because they're going to Booker. And I don't know. I just want to see more from the Suns. Like I thought Cat outplayed KD, even though KD people were like, "Wow, what a great game by KD! What a great shooting game." I'm like, I was just more impressed that Cat's like popping off of some set, and then McDaniel's is rolling, and he got an and he well, I think he missed the free throw, but he got like fouled and he scored through Nurk on a roll, and it's just like I don't know. The Wolves just look more impressive, more complete, stronger, bigger, executing
A
better.
lot bigger.
And it's like we can go through specific matchups, but when you're looking at a team and how they're going to fare in the playoffs, you can still look at how they did against good teams in the regular season. And the Wolves did really well, and the Suns are really inconsistent. So it's like, are the Suns really going to win 4 games against this team that almost won the 1 seed in the West? I don't know. I'm starting to doubt it, but I don't know. I'm really excited to see this game tonight because they could turn it around and like light the world on fire, and the Wolves could go cold. We didn't talk a ton about the Ant matchup, like in
I
this. Like,
know.
I
And
mean,
Ant was the star of this game,
yeah, it's
quite
like Ant.
obviously.
They're gonna try to dare Ant to pass and make tough skip passes, and he did turn the ball over. He had what was it, 6 assists but 6 turnovers or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
he found some nice spot up players like Nah and other players who hit shots, and other times he turned it over trying to make a tough pass. They still got to do that. I mean, Frank Vogel, he's a defensive coach, so they're going to make, the Suns are going to try to commit to being really disciplined in their rotations and like putting an effort on the defensive end and rotating. But I think the Wolves still have enough there. Like, as much as I question their offense, I think they still have enough to keep pace with the Suns, as opposed to other really talented teams in the West, where then I think it's going to be maybe more of a problem.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree that this is probably the most advantageous matchup for Phoenix, and they're currently getting boat raced as of game 1. So it'll be really interesting to see if and how they're able to adjust. We've talked about how they have really similar to the Lakers, like they have one winning formula. Um, I think because of their depth, as you referenced, compared to these other teams, like the guys that they bring off the bench are there to supplement the one way that they are able to win, which is like they need spacing and gotta like let Katie and Book be able to go ISO 1-on-1, BL 2, and then have these shooters around them to kind of play off that attention. Um, I do think it's going to be interesting to see how Ant continues to fare in this matchup. Ant was not really going off that much in the first half, and the Wolves were still able to build their initial lead. The Suns kind of came back, and then Ant kind of shut the door on them.
Yeah, those shot
But
making at the end was insane.
the right, he is going to need a big series, I think, because Phoenix will play better. They will make some adjustments, and those margins will be a little bit smaller. I was not impressed with the Wolves. They built something like a 15-point lead at half, I think, and then the Suns were able to cut it to 5 at one point before the Wolves pushed it back up. I've seen Minnesota blow big leads this regular season because their offense runs cold, and they need to keep working on their execution in order on particularly offensively in order to prevent that from happening, because as great as their defense is, we're gonna well, I'm gonna have some words on some teams that have amazing defenses, but when your offense runs cold, like getting 10 stops in a row doesn't mean anything if you're not able to score on the other end, especially if the other team is able to finally get a bucket, even if it's a tough one. And I think I was more impressed with him in the second half. Obviously, the shot making was crazy. He was able to find some guys for spot ups. He draws a lot of attention going downhill. Phoenix's game plan is just they are zoning up on him whenever he gets um, below the free throw line. So Minnesota is going to need to counter that, because although I was very impressed with his shot making, he is not a very efficient pull up shooter. We saw him kill us almost in round one last year when the Nuggets played the Wolves. But I don't think the Minnesota should rely on that necessarily in some stretches. So they're going to need to keep cleaning up the turnovers in particular, because both of these teams struggle with turnovers, so that when they are able to build leads using all of these athletic and just basketball based advantages that they should have over this Phoenix Suns team, they don't want to like fritter those away because of bad offensive stretches. Yeah, also super impressed with Cat. I wanted to just give another shout out to Rudy Gobert here because, like I said, he was being switched on to everybody in this game. And he gets a lot of flack for, his supposed lack of defensive versatility. And like you said, like Katie went 1 of 3 at the rim in this game. And
Yeah.
part of that is like Katie's got to make those shots. But the other part is like Rudy is the best rim protector on the overall in terms of deterrence and affecting shots in the NBA. And in addition to that thing that he excels at the most and brings in terms of the value to this team that allows their perimeter guys to be as aggressive as they are, because they know that even if there's a mistake, like Rudy's on the back line and he's not going to let too much in terms of easy layups happening. He was switching on to Katie. He was in some hedge and recover stuff. The Wolves went some zone, and Rudy was flying all around the place trying to disrupt passing lanes. All of the Wolves were contributing to that, but I wanted to shout out Rudy in particular because, as annoying as he is to us because of his days, the Jazz and that whole thing between him and Jokic, um, now Jokic dominates them, so like we don't have to be as salty about it. And I just want to give this player his flowers because he is probably about to get his 4th Defensive Player of the Year, and I think it's pretty lame to discredit his um, his impact on the game, even in these different schemes. because the dude still has a 7'9" wingspan. He had the longest one in the NBA before Wemby came in. um, and that just allows him to, as long as he's able to maintain his activity, he's able to impact the defensive end of the floor, even in these different schemes.
Yeah, shout out to Rudy Gobert. He was voted the most overrated player by the players in the polls that were coming out on the Athletic. But
They only like
yeah,
real hoopers.
yeah. Let's see him do a crossover and jump shot from the elbow. Then people will respect him. But yeah, I like Rudy Gobert kind of now. I mean, just I'm just gonna be really transparent. I've never really liked him that much. But in this series, watching him, I'm like, good for you, man. Like I do feel good. I feel good for him, and I'm gonna keep like enjoying him in this series until he plays the Nuggets. Then I'll be back on the hate train.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Cavs Magic series because this series looked very different than I expected, in that it is a defensive rock fight, as it turns out. Both teams are defending at a really high level, but the Orlando Magic's offense somehow looks worse than it did in the regular season. It's already so
Wow,
bad.
it's just a
Uh,
horrible shooting
and I know they're
first two
not, they don't
games.
tend to be great against good defensive teams, but I didn't think it would get this much worse. They
Mm-hmm.
cannot buy a three. They keep fighting in these games, and they're able to cut the lead, cut it to single digits, cut it to 13 after Cleveland goes up big. That's been the case in both of the first two games, because Donovan Mitchell's been cooking, and I think Orlando has changed up some of their coverages on Mitchell. I'm curious to see how that progresses. Then they have Darius Garland, the Cavs do. So they have to deal with two higher level creators than anyone on their team. They keep turning the ball over, all of the stuff that, like, this is what was expected of Orlando, but they are defending their asses off. They're getting blown out in games where their defensive rating is a 101,
Yeah,
which
but they're
is
like in the 80s on
spectacular. But
offense.
they're in the 80s and 90s on offense. And so I do think that they will probably win a game where they just shoot better. These games have
Mm-hmm.
been on the road. They're not like a great road team, but I thought maybe they would steal one of these. I think I've been really impressed with Cleveland's physicality. They've definitely answered the call after they got embarrassed last year against New York. They've been really great on the boards in that they're able to keep it even in this series. Offensive and defensive rebounding has been about the same for both teams. It's really more about Orlando's offense not being able to produce. And similar to New York, if you can keep that team off the offensive glass, at least not let them have a massive advantage, like their offense really, really struggles. Um, it has been worse in part because the non Paolo and non Paolo, non Mo Wagner Magic are shooting below 38% from the field in this series. I think the beginning of the first game, like, everyone was really shaken except for Paolo. He was the only one driving in, also turning the ball over a lot because Cleveland basically knows, like, we just have to load up on Paolo because no one else can create anything. Um, but everyone else was really shaken. Like, they, like, you saw the looks on their faces when they catch the ball, like they were just like amped. Um, I think they came out with a little more calmness in game two, but they still just weren't making shots. I think Cole Anthony, who had been a really good six man for them, has really played poorly in this series, particularly offensively. And he's not a defensive plus and can be a negative in certain possessions and certain matchups. So
Yeah,
he's going to need to bring that more if they're
he's not
going to win
really
a
doing,
game.
not doing what he needs to do if he's gonna stay
Yeah.
on the floor. Like they have to have
They
him
have to
shooting.
have some scoring from him. He, I think, only made 2 shots in the last game. He's not shot ready off the catch either. I actually think Paolo's doing a really good job. Paolo and Franz are doing a good job with their playmaking in this series, despite some of the turnovers. Like, they're trying to find guys and kind of create advantages off the attention that they're getting. Like, they're not really forcing too much. especially Paolo. Like Paolo's shooting over 50% from the floor in this series. So there's still some turnovers to deal with, but also when the guys get the passes, they're not making those shots. They're not attacking the closeouts. And so it's definitely revealing everything or highlighting, emphasizing everything that I already knew was wrong with Orlando's offense. But I've been impressed with them despite it because they're down 20 in this game. They cut it to single digits at some point early in the fourth, and then Cleveland just has to kind of hang on and push it out more. But Orlando is just so aggressive in trying to just hang in these games. But like these dudes
Yeah.
need buckets, man,
Yeah.
and
I mean, they're a
they're
young
not getting them.
team, so they're getting answers. They're have a bright future. They have very young
Yeah,
players, especially Paolo. So it's like they're getting some direction, getting some answers, and just got to keep building and stick with it. So I hope that the Magic do something to make this series more like competitive. And just, I mean, they're competing, but just the results, like in the scores, like if they're closer, we can talk more details about this series, other than like just their offense is struggling. So yeah, but I'm also glad Jalen Suggs isn't out. Like he got carried off the court and he just
yeah,
got
I had
banged
that
in the
knee
in the knee.
hyperextension,
Yeah,
and the
so
dude is still like trying to
still
steal
going.
everything and like dunk in
Yeah,
transition, and
because he's fun to
he's just
watch.
a
So it would be much worse
menace.
without him. So I'm glad that
Yeah.
he's playing.
I'm impressed with Cleveland answering the call with their physicality. I'm kind of ticked off that they're getting rewarded for punting on that last game in the regular
Yeah.
season. I thought the basketball gods would punish them, but the basketball gods are too busy rewarding the New York Knicks right now. Um, and Evan Mobley has been spectacular on both ends in this series. He's rising up into his 3-point shot very confidently, and he's making some of them, like a good number of them. When Jarrett Allen's off the floor, he is sealing guys in the post, rim running, attacking mismatches, and defensively, like he's always crazy. Like wasn't he second in DPOY voting last year? Had some crazy
Hmm.
blocks in game two. He was the only two that Paolo missed in game one was a short fadeaway midi over Evan Mobley. I actually think Franz is having a better time attacking Evan Mobley than Paolo. It's an interesting, like, oh, look at these young players trying to kind of figure each other out on both ends of the floor. So it's one of
Yeah.
those kind of series, but yeah, I just wanted to shout that out. And then the Pacers play the Bucks tonight. They got routed in game one. They were not good offensively. They started to gain some ground in the second half, but Dame like killed them in the first half. He had 35 points. I don't think he scored in the second half. Um, it'll be interesting to see what adjustments Indiana makes because I think you picked them in this series, right?
No, I think I still pick the Bucks,
You picked the
thankfully.
Bucks? Okay, we both
Yeah.
picked the Bucks. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of on track. Like they just need to win a couple of games without Giannis. And I think when Giannis comes back, this series is basically
Yeah. It's not
curtains
looking
for
good for the
Indy.
Pacers. So
But it'll
yeah,
be interesting to
Bucks.
see how they do adjust.
Yeah. I'll be excited for all the games going forward. Yeah. If we get games like Nuggets Knicks, I'll love it. But I'm also very interested in Mavs Clippers. We didn't talk about that on this show. There's only been one game, no Kawhi. Surprisingly, still made things difficult for the Mavs with Zubac.
The Mavs have to play better than that. And they will because they looked horrible offensively in this game. Like the
Mm-hmm.
worst I've seen them this season, even before the trades. Um, and Luca was horrible
Yeah.
defensively in this
Yeah, I
game.
was
The
gonna
game
say, how
plan was to
about
attack.
Luca on defense?
Yeah, like Harden was cooking Luca. Everyone was cooking
Yeah,
Luca,
they were just
and he
rotating
wasn't
it.
good in pick and roll. It was really like a
Yeah.
strange game. I really expected more energy from the whole team. I thought PJ Washington was probably um Kyrie was great in this game, actually, especially in the second half. But PJ Washington came out with the requisite energy and defensive intensity that he needed for that Paul George matchup. I thought he did a great job on PG, but Luca and Gafford were definitely defensive liabilities for them in this game, and they could not score in the first half. I think they had 8 points in the second quarter. It
Ugh,
was crazy.
brutal.
Um, so
Yeah, I
I'm
really
like
want to see
Pacers
them.
and Mavs need to make some adjustments.
Yeah, I want to see the Mavs make this interesting. There's some series where, as a Nuggets fan, I need them to go a little longer. Not that we are playing the Clippers or Mavs, but I just want all the West to be run down. So
Except
come
us.
on. Yeah, I want to sweep, and the rest can go 7 or something.
Well, we need the Lakers to at least win a game so that they keep Darvin Ham and don't try to steal David Adelman from us.
Oh, that would be so weird. But
What
I
if
guess they
we oh,
could.
if DA went over there? Yeah, it would be weird.
I guess the Lakers could try to get some intel from him. Like, what do we do? But the Lakers just need a better roster,
DA will
too.
just be like, I don't know. Like
There's nothing you can do. That's you hired me just for me to come and say I have no idea how to stop Jokic.
I
uh,
just don't want to lose him. Like he's been a great
yeah, I don't want
offensive
to. But I
coordinator.
want if he wants to coach, I'm happy for him. But
Can
I don't
he
want
if
him.
he does want to coach, can he go east though?
Yeah, I hope so.
But I'd rather he just didn't leave.
Unless JJ Redick ends up on the Hornets, which I think is so weird. But more power to you, JJ. You love the game. I respect
Mind the
it.
game. We're
Mind
gonna
the
get a
game.
fire mind the game episode if and when the Lakers lose this series to the Nuggets.
Yeah, when LeBron's just fully locked in on this podcast, I hope he just goes all in on talking about the other players and the adjustments and isn't keeping everything as close to the vest so that we can all hear his thoughts. Just like Draymond Green is doing. I'm gonna watch some more Draymond since he's out of the playoffs. So
Yeah, these guys are bored now.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, well that's it from me. You want to take us out?
Yeah, this has been What's in a Game. We are going to keep talking about these series as the playoffs progress. And we hope you guys are going to join us because these discussions have been really great as playoff basketball is delivering on really high intensity, high drama.
And it'll just get better as it goes on. So stick with us and subscribe to us and follow us. Follow our Twitter at What's in the Game NBA, and follow Grace and I on Twitter too, because we're going to be talking about the playoffs.
Our live reactions are definitely on Twitter. At least mine are.
Yes. Yes. If you're not following Grace, what are you doing? Gosh. All right. Well, we'll see you next time.